His parents did not want him and gave him up for adoption, not realizing what he would become years later. Often we are victims of injustice and cruel blows of life due to circumstances that we do not choose, and sometimes other people decide for us. However, strength and the ability to rise up and persevere is the greatest virtue we possess. That's what happened to this man, too. From the first minute he was born, his destiny was shaped by decisions made by others without his consent. When he couldn't decide how to walk or talk as a newborn, his inexperienced and young parents, university students, made the difficult and harsh decision to give him up for adoption. The boy was adopted by a young middle-income couple, somewhat limited but able to raise him without the need for luxuries. He was engaged in simple labor as a train conductor and housewife. His parents were forced to move to another city in search of better living opportunities. It was in this city with promising technological advancements that he began his academic preparation for elementary and then middle school. From an early age, the boy showed a keen interest in technology and electronics, which led him to join the technology club at his school. It was then, at an early age, that his dreams of innovating in this exciting digital world were born. This young man with a desire to develop and learn more electronics went to a university in another state, far away from his parents, with hopes and dreams to learn and develop. Unfortunately, his financial situation and that of his family was not the best, so he was forced to drop out almost at the very beginning of his career due to lack of money. Having traded dreams of a promising future for dreams of innovating the world, in these moments of despair, trying to continue his studies, he started his professional life by looking for and getting easy jobs, usually with very low salaries, which were not enough for existence. Thus left with no money and no studies, he returned home feeling destroyed and a little lost because of the circumstances he had to face. However, he remained steadfast in his dreams like a shrewd mind. He believed that there was something better out there for him and aimlessly hoped to find his way. He embarked on a journey into the unknown, moved to another country in search of opportunities for a better future, a journey where a light went on because a major gaming company of the time became interested. It was here that he got his first job. Soon after, he returned to his country and quit that company. Even though he came back with no money in his pocket, there was something bigger and more important for him. It was his dream to overcome obstacles and innovate in electronics and technology to develop the world. He didn't want to settle for what he had. He knew that he still had much more to discover. So, together with a fellow intern, and through what they learned along the way, they wanted to make a huge impact on the world. What was the idea? To create a unique artifact for each individual and to create a personal computer that would eventually become a global brand, recognized worldwide for its technological drive and innovation of thousands of future variants and creations. They worked tirelessly on it until they created the first original prototype. This young man's path has never been easy, and this idea was no exception to the rule. Despite the fact that the visionary mind had a great proposal on his hands, no one believed in his project, treating him like a maniac, and he was repeatedly turned down by thousands of people. He called every day to get them interested in his project and to bid on it. Everyone told him it was a bad idea, that he was just wasting his time. He had to sacrifice a lot, endlessly selling personal belongings and the few resources he had, until he reached that low point where he felt desperate and deprived of opportunities. He immediately reported massive growth for his new company, generating higher than expected profits and inspiring new ideas, computer innovations, and new technological devices that brought his brand to worldwide recognition. Despite a difficult situation caused by unfavorable circumstances, This man was determined to overcome the challenges through constant hard work, perseverance in realizing his innovative dream, and standing up for his ideals. Above all, his immense self-confidence was the driving force that enabled a boy who was rejected from childhood and categorized as ridiculous to pave the way of a great visionary and global business entrepreneur. He entered the world of entertainment, invested in animation, film companies, and other ventures, and eventually became a business tycoon widely recognized for his significant contribution to the technological advancement of man. This man turned out to be none other than the genius visionary Steve Jobs. He was born on February 24, 1955, in San Francisco, California, USA. He was a business tycoon, industrial designer, investor and owner of American Media, co-founder of Apple, one of the 4 most important technology companies in the world. He was also the majority shareholder and then owner of Pixar, one of the largest animated movie studios capable of creating the first computer-animated feature film under his control and ownership as a participant in numerous investments and creations. This impressive tycoon amassed a fortune estimated at around $7 billion and passed away at the age of 56 on October 5, 2011 in Palo Alto, California. Undoubtedly, he was a shining example of perseverance in overcoming obstacles, showing that in the face of adversity we can do 2 things: give up. He chose to move forward and strive to leave his mark on the world by creating innovation and creativity as we know it today. If you like the stories on our channel, give it a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and put a bell to be the first listeners of another new story. Good luck and come back. It will be interesting.